Evercourse is a top-ranking Warlock in Blackwing Lair, and the reason I am singling him out is because unlike the traditional Warlocks, he is going fire again. He is even the rank 1 Warlock in Broodlord Lash Layer. We're talking a top player playing an off-meta build. The meta has forever been shattered, and we're gonna take a look at his build. Now, as I told you, this is a fire build and he is going for destruction. First of all, you take Cataclysm, it reduces the mana cost of your spells. Then he takes Bane, because Bane makes your immolate a little faster. Then you're gonna go for Devastation, because it is critical strike, of course. Also gonna take 2 points in Firebolt for the Imp, because it's gonna be running Imp, and that's gonna increase the damage. Destructive Reach is gonna help you do your rotation a little easier, because it gives you range, it is really convenient. Then he's gonna take 1 point here in Intensity. You can take a point in Shadowborn, it's not gonna be in the rotation, but that's something you can do. It doesn't really matter because nothing here is very good. Shadowborn is not gonna be in the rotation, so this point is basically just a filler. And then you're gonna take Immolate. Immolate, you need the 5 points to get Conflagrate down here. Then you're gonna take Ruin, so your crits do double damage instead of 50% more damage. Very important for your scaling, of course. And then Emberstorm. 5 points in Emberstorm is 10% more damage and Conflagrate. Now, the reason that Conflagrate is a big deal now is because Conflagrate gives you haste, 30% haste, and that's what he's abusing to get the damage that he's getting. Then for the fillers, we're gonna take Improved Imp, because once again you're running Imp, so this is gonna give it more fire damage. Then you're gonna go down for Corruption. He tends not to do Corruption very often. You can throw it out if you are forced to move, essentially. If you gotta move for whatever reason, Corruption is an instant spell with this talent, and it's a nice little filler just so you don't lose the global when you're moving. That's the only situation where he will use it, but the reason he goes down here is because he wants to get that extra life tap. 20% life tap is less global spent on tapping and more global spent on pumping. The other points are kinda useless because he will not be doing Drain Life, that's not gonna be his runes. So you kinda gotta take what you feel like. Of course, Improved Healthstone is a little convenient and you can take extra HP. It doesn't really matter. You can take Course of Weakness too if you wanna help out the raid, that's not a terrible idea. There is nothing that's really important. Improved Drain Soul is also a nice quality of life one that you can take. It doesn't really matter, these robot talents. The important ones are all here, and this one lies here for the Imp, and that's the last one that matters. That's the main problem with going full fire, is that most of your other talents are wasted. But we're gonna see how he makes it work with the runes, because he is taking quite a few runes that actually manage to fix this whole thing. For the head, he's gonna be taking Backdraft, because it is 30% haste, of course. That's the thing that makes everything work. 30% faster cast, that's huge, of course, and Conflagrate does a little bit of damage, so that whole thing buffs your entire rotation, and that's why fire scales so well. For the back, he's gonna take Mark of Chaos. It is a very important debuff that reduces the resistance of the enemy. The cool thing about going fire is that you do not have to sacrifice anything to take it, so you can support the raid, and that makes you a lot more valuable. For the chest, he's gonna take Demonic Tactics. It is just 10% critical strike, so that's a nice little amount of damage right there. For the bracers, he's gonna be taking Incinerate, of course. Incinerate gives you 40% more fire damage. That's a big part of why the fire warlock is doing so much damage. It's part of your rotation, is the filler. And then for the hands, he's gonna be taking Chaos Bolt. Chaos Bolt simply does a quadrillion damage. That's pretty much it. For the waist, he's gonna be taking Shadow and Flame. It gives you 10% Shadow and Fire damage. Super exponentially scales of Incinerate and Backdraft. As you can see, that's another reason. Very similar to the Warrior if you start thinking about it. Like, you're just stacking percentage modifiers. For the legs, you're gonna be taking Demonic Pact. It gives you 10% more damage, and it gives you 10% more on top of that every time your pet crits, which is also a big reason why you take Demonic Tactics, so your pet can crit more often, so you get that buff a little more. It all comes and goes. It's very synergistic build. For the feet, he's gonna be taking Decimation. Soulfire is going to be your number one damaging spell with this. It has no cooldown now, and when you are below 35% HP, the enemy is like Execute. You can cast it 40% faster, which is absolutely bonkers. And for the rings, of course, he's gonna be taking Fire and Shadow Specialization, and that's pretty much it. That's just for hit. Your stat priority is rather simple. First of all, you wanna take your hit cap, which is gonna be 10% because you get 6% for free from the runes. Getting hit cap as a warlock is a bit of a pain in the butt. You gotta take a lot of hit pieces. And after that, you wanna go for spell power. This build scales very well with spell power. You do not really need crits to do any of your damage. Crit will help, of course, but it only helps in the sense that you hit a little harder. It doesn't really enable you much to do anything. Your pet crits do, but your crits don't, so that's why spell power is better than intellect or crit. Of course, intellect or crit is gonna go next, and stamina will help a little too, because you can tap a little. It's something that you wanna consider. As for your rotation, first of all, you wanna do incinerate, and you wanna keep it on the boss at all times. Incinerate is 40% more damage, you gotta keep it up. After that, you gotta go for immolate. Immolate is a dot and you gotta consume it to do your conflagrate, so that's very important. Thankfully, your immolate is not gonna be consumed by the conflagrate anymore because of backdraft, so that's a little less things you gotta worry about. You also wanna drop a curse, so you can reduce the resistance of the boss, whatever curse you got, recklessness, weakness, whatever curse you're assigned to. And those 3 debuffs you gotta keep on the boss at all times. And after that, number 1 is gonna be conflagrate. You wanna do conflagrate on cooldown to keep your 30% haste, super important. Following that is gonna go Chaos Bolt. Chaos Bolt hits super hard, of course you're gonna do it on cooldown. And after all of that is gonna go Incinerate as a filler. As you can see, Soulfire is not in the rotation, so why do I say that Soulfire is gonna be your number 1 ability? Well, once again, that's for the execute phase. And in the execute phase, you're just gonna do Conflagrate for the haste, and then you're gonna do Soulfire. Of course, keeping up all the debuffs on the boss, that's still something you gotta do, but Soulfire, 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 Conflagrate, Soulfire, Soulfire. That's basically it. It is stupid. It is ungodly the amount of damage you can do from below 35% HP. Soulfire hits so hard, it is insane, and that's the reason that this build actually works. Now, the reason that this whole build works so well, this is not necessary, by the way, this is not something that you need to have, but it makes it a lot better, is that the 6-piece tier 1 set, and you can get tier 1 on the set bonuses of tier 2 now with the core force mechanic, you get a 4% chance every time you do an incinerate of getting a fast Soulfire from decimation again anyway. So that's also one of the reasons that your Soulfire is like a top ability in your game. I am gonna drop a Wikora in the Discord in the SoD UI and macros channel for the Warlock. It's gonna tell you when you get decimation. It's gonna show like an icon of decimation in your screen, and that way you can tell, even if you're not below 35%, that you should do a Soulfire. Should make it a little easier to track of this set bonus, but yeah, you definitely gotta go for tier 1. Tier 2 set has nothing fire related on it, that kinda sucks, but it's still a really good set bonus. The main weakness of this build is that your AoE is going to suck. You got no good AoE runes. You can swap runes. You can take the Lake of Fire rune, for example, to get an instant Rain of Fire, or you can get Shadow Flame, that's also a decent one. But assuming you didn't do that to cheese an AoE fight, there is not really a fight in BWL where you gotta do that, honestly. You are basically stuck with spamming corruption if you're doing multi-target, like 3 mobs or something like that, and if you're doing more than 3 mobs, you just do Rain of Fire, and yeah, the damage is not gonna be very good. And yes, I am just very happy that the Fire Dream is finally back on the menu. Fire is the best Warlock spec. Subscribe, join the Discord, and thank you for watching.